Okay, Unscripted, The Fringe, episode number 4. On The Fringe, we explore genres of music that are on the fringe of what we play at 5FM. And my guest today is Nikita Dawson, all the way from Pretoria. Multi-talented singer, musician, music compiler, person involved in the music industry. Nikita, Unscripted, welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
Cool.
Yeah, I can't do no small talk, no small talk. I'm not with the small talk. Can't be with the small talk.
All right, so let's get into it. Your genre of music. You described it earlier as alternative. When you hear your genre of music, it's obvious that you draw from a lot of female-orientated
Artists and stuff.
Yeah. Can you tell me, sort of South Africa locally, how you got to where your sound is now?
So I've always been listening. My parents kind of introduced me to artists like Brenda Fassie and that kind of like soulful genre mixed in with dance and like disco kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've always been into that kind of like soulful situation when it comes to like R&B South African music from like the 90s and early 2000s. And then I started taking inspiration kind of from hip hop artists in the industry.
Cool.
Because I wanted to kind of blend the sounds of hip hop and like the 808s of hip hop with like R&B, and then still make it something that people could connect with.
Okay, so when I was growing up, one of the biggest songs and one of my favorite songs still to this day was Squatter Camp Umoya, where Relo does exactly that, where she takes a bunch of aggression and a bunch of hip hop and she infuses like soul and R&B into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you just describe your writing process when you're sitting in front of a blank page? What do you start with? Do you start with a beat first, or how does it work?
I work better listening to the beats and listening to the production first, because I kind of work off beat, melody, and then subject, then lyrics.
Okay.
So
where do you get your production from? Like, what is your sourcing point now?
Right now, I still have like friends from when I was in high school that was making like beats on Fruity Loops. Like,
Cool.
I still have them sending me production, because progressively, like, I've gotten better and they've gotten better. So that's kind of where I get my sourcing from. Or I've attempted to make my own music. It hasn't been going that well.
Yeah,
but,
I
know.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I've been trying to write my own like sort of like little underground like sort of EDM like hip hoppy kind of stuff,
It's
and it
so
just
much
doesn't work.
harder than you think it is.
No, for sure. Like, you look at like some of the top guys and you're like, oh, okay, cool. It takes them a day to like put together a song. Like, it's not like that. It's not like that.
I wish it was, because I think music would move a little faster.
No, for sure. Okay, so you sit down with the track. Somebody sends you a track, and then it's time to write. Your lyrical sort of themes. When you're looking at a particular track, what influences you in terms of your themes?
The particular sounds that I hear. So if they're using like ambience in their like music, so like for most of the music that I do make, my producers use a lot of like wind chimes and like ocean waves. So it's always about like that type of, I guess, vibe when it comes to my music. And then I kind of like join it to a memory that I have of that particular sensation. So if it's like a beach like crash or whatever, then any memory I have connected to that I kind of pull from and then like write for.
Okay, that's cool. Because when I write music, I look for the inspiration first. So what I'm tending to do now is I'm not relying on memories, I'm relying on experiences. So if I go through like a really shitty experience, I'll sit down and the first thing that I do is I'll write about it. And I'll go, okay, cool. All right, that's how I felt. That's, do you find that it becomes easier to get into your own head the more and more you write?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that at the beginning it was easier because I had so much to think about, and now I overthink what I write because I feel like I'm trying to, what's the word, censor myself a little bit, because sometimes you overwrite everything and you rewrite stuff, and I'm now finding it very difficult to even write like a 4-line verse because I'm constantly thinking, okay, no, it needs to be short, it needs to do this, or it needs to do that. So it's become a little bit harder now, I think, in my experience.
So what happens with my writing process, because I write music with multiple other people, my writing process will be, I'll start with an experience, I'll start writing about it, and then that blossoms into a theme. And by the time I take it to my band or to my collaborators or whatever it is, they look at it and they're like, wait, what's the theme again? Like, yeah. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about modern day music in South Africa. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about the scene. Back in the day, you had a couple of outlets. You had radio, you had TV. Now there's
And SoundCloud.
Now there's a million different ways to get your music out there.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything? Are you thinking in a different way? Are you approaching social media in a different way? And the reason why I ask is because I've seen your social media. I've seen on the previous album that you released, you did a whole EPK where you basically went song by song on your socials, and I thought that was just such a cool way of doing it. Are you thinking outside of the box when it comes to that kind of thing?
I do. I think that people don't consume music the same that they used to, and I feel like just an audio experience is not enough, I guess, in this type of like the way the music and the industry is working. So the whole building basically like an image and a video and a color for every song of like my previous album was just me trying to, if you're not listening to the full album, then this particular sound and this particular look will interest this one particular type of person.
Gotcha.
So I'm not really like focusing on one group of people, but anyone who finds anything that they can connect to in some way.
I hear you.
Yeah. So that was with color, with music, with the animations that I used for my album, because I feel like people love cartoons and like have a weird nostalgic feeling with cartoons. So I also brought that in because just to get people's interest, because there's so much that happens anyway and doesn't get that much light anyway. So
no, for sure. It's interesting that you should mention cartoons. There's a bunch of artists that are coming out at the moment, and they don't want to show their faces anymore. They're like, Young Beethoven is the perfect example. He's just like, or they are just like, cool, we're just gonna be like this beanie cartoon person, and it's like, I think it's cool. Okay, so you described aesthetic, and I know that Kilani, for example, is somebody who hugely influences you.
Yeah.
Kilani's aesthetic for me is always, it always stands out. What was it like seeing her on South African soil?
Oh my word! Okay, I need to take a breath because I went with my friend and I had already told her at the beginning of the day that like if I cry when I see her, just don't mind me. Pretend I'm not there, don't perceive me. And then it ended up that the entire performance I was just staring at her in awe. Like I had nothing to say. I couldn't even sing along to the music because I was just like, this is the person who's literally inspired the way I think about life now. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
But it was also like a full circle moment because like seeing her, I like thought of the person that I was when I was introduced to her, and I'm like, wow, the evolution is so cute. So yeah, it was fulfilling.
No,
deeply
for sure.
Fulfilling.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's such a gratifying feeling when you walk away from a performance and you go, okay, that was cool.
But I was so upset that I didn't get backstage so I could meet her. I was so upset.
But okay, if there's anything that I've learned, firstly, backstage isn't as cool as what everybody says it is. It's especially at festivals because like, you're gonna have free booze and free this and free that. It's not like that at all. The only thing that's cool about it is they've got free toilets, and like you don't need to wait in a line. The other little bit of advice that I can give is if you can, don't meet your idols.
Oh, Mike, I already had an experience with an idol that was just so bad.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I understand why people are like, rather keep the people you admire at an arm's distance, because that bubble, when it pops, it's so sad and so demeaning. Sure. But
yeah, I've had that on numerous occasions. Just getting back to the whole like going and being in awe of like somebody performing many years ago. I thought it would be a good idea to take a person who I really liked on a date to go and watch one of my favorite bands. And when I watch my favorite bands, I just get into my own head and like don't speak. So this poor person was sitting there for like 45 minutes with somebody just watching a band, and like, yeah, she must have thought, what is this weirdo doing? Like, we're
here on a date too, so you could have fun.
Yeah. No, cool. Okay, so music is obviously your it's your passion, it's your driving force. But like many of us, you also have a day job. You have things going on in your life as well. And music, unfortunately, is what you do in the evenings and on weekends.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do during the day? You are a music compiler, which means that you select music and you play it on a fairly well-known platform. The influences that you get from some of the music that you hear, does that affect the music that you write?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I feel like the music that I'm constantly exposed to because of my day job kind of helps mold what I personally want to put out as a musician and what messages I want to put out.
Okay.
Because not a lot of commercial music, I feel, brings forth like a human experience that people can actually like keep on at it. Basically, like a replay value situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I want that for myself and my own music. So it's more not kind of changed or helped how I write, but rather how I view my own music and how I want my music to influence, if that makes sense.
Yes. Is
Yeah.
commerciality something that that you aim for, or does it just come with the territory?
I think it just comes with the territory. If you want
Yeah.
more people to listen to music, you unfortunately have to like go that route. But I don't think that it should be the only goal, especially as a musician, because I feel like you get very lost as an artist. Besides it being a performer, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've stopped trying to write catchy music. And now write music that I want to listen to. If that makes sense. Okay, let's talk about the South African scene at the moment. We've seen a super positive influx of LGBTQI plus artists in South Africa. What's your take on the fact that we've got artists that are just becoming that? Back in the day, 10 years ago, it used to be, oh, this person is an LGBTQI plus artist, and they make music.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just like, cool, people make music. Let's move on.
And then they are.
Yes,
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think it's good. I feel like, the first identifier of an artist shouldn't be their preference or who they are or how they express themselves. I feel like the art should speak for it, but obviously I understand that some of the art is rooted in their queerness, you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
But at the same time, I'm also just glad that like hetero people are also embracing the fact that like queer music or queer artists are not just for that community, but it's for everyone. You know, it's a vibe for everyone. And again, the empathy that comes with having queer artists in the space, do you know what I mean? The sensitivity that comes with that wasn't there before, I feel like is also really important. Because
Are you finding that it's just becoming easier? It's not you don't have to hide behind. Okay. Do you think that in South Africa we're going to reach a point where we've got enough places that are playing music that music just becomes music, and we don't need to worry about identity, we don't need to worry about sexuality, we don't need to worry about do you think that that's going to become a thing?
I do. I feel like as of recently, like obviously like there's balls and like queer community like events that happen around Joburg and stuff like that more frequently than I've ever seen in my whole life. So I feel like the more that expands, the more that it won't be just labeled as a queer community event, then it will just be people enjoying themselves and being overly expressive and flamboyant and eccentric.
Yeah. What I've found very interesting is how many people in the music circles that I move in are going to events just because they want to see the music, and they might not necessarily be part of the LGBTQI plus community, but they are, but they're interested in the music, and I think that's very important to notice.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about sexuality in music. I'm very interested to see an artist like Taylor Swift completely shift her genre and completely shift her style into almost this asexual kind of thing where she's writing music for herself essentially, but she's not the only one. There's a bunch of artists that have chosen to do that, but then on the opposite side of the coin, you've got artists like Doja Cat and Megan Thee Stallion who are going the complete hypersexual. Sexuality in music for you as a writer, is that something that is important for you?
Me in particular, no.
Okay.
I feel like the closest I get to my music and how I express my sexuality is maybe just in the aesthetic of how my music looks, but subject matter, no. I'm an emotional person, so I sing about being sad more than I sing about like who I like, or like how I see the world in that way. Yeah,
for sure. No, I get that. I fully get that, and I think it's important to stick to what you know and don't force it. Like I don't think anybody wants to hear a song written by me about my sexuality. So like I just move on from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also like I still feel like I'm still learning about my own queerness. So I feel like I'm still too young to be having not an opinion, but like a storyline to like put out, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I don't have enough experience to write about it enough.
But yeah, and I also think that your narrative is your narrative, and the more comfortable you get with it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's just talk about the South African scene very quickly in terms of singers, songwriters. I was privileged enough to go and attend an event a couple of weeks ago where I witnessed a female vocalist with a very, very, very wide variety of musicians around her. Percussionists and all sorts of... There was a dude blowing a vuvuzela and a person screaming into a microphone. And it was really cool to see people experimenting again. In the female singer-songwriter space.
Yes.
Do you feel as though South Africa is getting a little bit more experimental? Or do you think we're still stuck in what we were stuck in about 4 years ago, where it's like the cookie cutter, you got to sound like Lady Zamar or you're not going to get radio play kind of thing?
No, I definitely think so. I feel like the fringe of our genres...
There you go. The fringe on 5FM.
is becoming more expansive. Like even the artists that I listen to like now, like Lord Kez or Mani Badu, for example, like they are R&B and hip hop artists, but they do something so much more than that, because the way they write, the way that they put the music together, the way they playlist the music together, the way they release music and how they want people to experience it it's different to what I've ever experienced. So it's almost something to always look up to, especially in that kind of category of music that I want to go in. And also just like pushing the idea of what South African music is supposed to sound like. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I feel as South Africans, we are very talented with instruments, especially like percussion and guitars and stuff like that. So I would feel like that would be something that we can put forward and make it our own South African sound without it being, too sounding like other places. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we're getting there very, very closely. Yeah.
I also think that there's a lot to be said about genre merging in South Africa. We're not scared to put a blues track with a hip hop track and an R&B track with a house track. And yeah. And I think that's very important. I think that scenes become very stagnant if you don't do that. Internationally, anything that's turning you on at the moment? Any scenes that you're looking at going, oh, I really want to go to Texas, or I really want to go to Berlin, or like, is there anything that stands out for you?
Not a particular place, but a particular sound. Okay. I'm gravitating a lot towards like indie R&B, if that makes sense.
Got you.
So it's borderline rock, but it's also borderline R&B, and that I feel like is mostly again in the US, probably like deep Europe situations. But that type of sound I don't feel is made enough in South Africa, so that's why I've gravitated towards that, and that's kind of where I want my sound to like migrate.
Yeah.
I
think a lot of people are very cautious to play with rock in South Africa because of how small the scene is, and like you don't want to be labeled as a rock band because and trust me, as somebody who is in a rock band, that's exactly what happens. Talking of which, there've been a couple of moments in the last, let's call it 6 weeks, in music in South Africa, where a couple of artists have been accused of certain things. Without getting into detail, I feel as though movements like #MeToo in South Africa are still extremely relevant. And without sounding brash, what is it about men in South Africa that they just don't get it? I'm saying this from somebody who I'm asking you because I don't know. What is it about guys in this country that are failing to see where the boundaries are?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I feel like, in the sense, South African men, controversial yet brave, have kind of been what's the word? Okay, actually no. Let me talk about the women. Women have this like idea or like culture of silence, in a sense, where even if we're uncomfortable, even if we put in like very sticky situations, we don't feel comfortable to speak up because it might put us in a more dangerous situation, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Or it's that we don't have the diction to say no with like the intent to actually mean it, type thing. And then also, when it comes to men, the boundary situation, they're not socialized to respect boundaries and respect like the line of like,
So from personal preference and from personal, situations, I've now needed to go back and think about certain interactions and think about the way in which I made somebody feel, and like especially the boundaries thing. Like it's something that's hyper relevant to me at the moment. I hope that I haven't made somebody feel uncomfortable. But if I have, it's because I don't know where the boundaries are. I know where the boundaries should be. And I'm not just talking about myself. I'm talking about my peer group and my friendship circle and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I like to think that I'm fairly educated and work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult topic to raise.
It is, yeah.
But the reason why it's relevant now is because it's hyper relevant in music at the moment. You know, people are moving away from writing misogynistic lyrics. People are moving away from this idea that you've got to be like the strong guy, and like people are opening up about it. Are you finding that there's a shift? Has #MeToo in South Africa done its job, or are we still in the same situation that we were 20 years ago?
I feel like we're still processing. I feel like it's only now been like properly highlighted that this is an issue, and that there's a banner for like this is a problem type thing, and now it's going beyond that and actually being like, okay, what are the steps to like correct that type of issue? Like how do we socialize between each other knowing that this is like, again, the boundary that we should not supposed to cross or whatever, or that type of thing. It's more about, we need more conversations, because it's always about like, oh, this is the problem, and then people just kind of fold their arms, and it's like, okay, now what? Instead of having more conversations and figuring out how, when, where, what's the next step forward. And
do you think platforms like this, Unscripted especially, is the right place for us to be talking about it?
Yeah, because I mean, this conversation is not spoken about enough on like proper commercialized places where people can hear about it consistently and actually have an opinion and learn more about it. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's slightly sad that like only this type of like situation we can actually talk about these deep conversations and give people the knowledge, but also kind of a perspective to think about their own actions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's the major problem is getting people to think about themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of that. Like the only reason why I'm thinking about it now is because it's directly affecting my musical circles. And I go, oh, maybe I probably shouldn't have said that to her, or I shouldn't have sent that message. You know what I mean? And it shouldn't be like that. It should be don't even send her the message in the first place. Know where the boundaries are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. On a lighter note.
Yes.
We on the Fringe, we ask all of our artists, all of our guests, to put together a Mount Rushmore of music.
Oof. Okay.
So you can choose the top 4 people that you would put on your Nikita Dawson Mount Rushmore of music. Who would those 4 people be?
Existential crisis unlocked.
Okay. Before we go down to the 4, you've already mentioned people like Brenda Fassie,
Kehlani. Sade is a big one for me. I would say Prince. Prince is a really important one because he like spearheaded a lot of the music that we still make now.
Okay.
And like he spoke a lot about sampling, and so like when it comes back to sampling, I'll always reference Prince. And then I feel like the last one that I consistently move back to is like Majid Jordan, which is like obviously a contemporary artist, but they've been making music, and only now after like 6 or 7 years I only realized that they were making house music when they first started.
Yeah.
But we just thought it was music. We thought it was Majid Jordan. You
That's
know?
it.
That like transition of hearing music years later and it still being as beautiful as it was, like all those artists that I mentioned, they have that for them. Like for me.
Love it.
Yeah.
Cool. That's your top 4. Nikita Dawson, thank you so much. Where can we catch you on socials, Instagram, vibes? What's the vibe?
On Instagram it's Nikita Dawson X. On Twitter it's X Nikita Dawson, and then everywhere it's Nikita Dawson.
Cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Cool.
Yeah, I can't do no small talk, no small talk. I'm not with the small talk. Can't be with the small talk.